a super nerd and as an Asian American nerd. I think your character, Sabine, I think people don't understand it, especially if they're not Asian American Star Wars fans. Don't understand how like maybe life changing, I guess is too hyperbole, but like significant that character is, because up until Sabine, there were no. I mean, she predates Rose, right? Like there were no Asian American or Asian coded Star Wars characters. I wrote a post on the Nerds of Color a couple years ago, kind of like documenting all the Asians in Star Wars, right? And it was
How
like,
long was that list?
we're right, for like 38 years or whatever. It was like the most Asian thing in Star Wars was like, Natalie Portman's wardrobe, and like one slave dancer in Jabba's palace, right? Like that was pretty much that was pretty much the epitome of Asian representation in Star Wars. And of course, I feel like Sabine opened the floodgates, because after Sabine, it was, you had Rogue One, and of course you had Rose Tico. Now you have now there's too many Asians in Star Wars. I can't even like do a follow-up post. But Sabine was the first, like, and then kind of like coding the Mandalorians as like the Wren clan were clearly Asian people, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's why I find Sabine such an important character in like the history of the entire franchise. And you're her, like forever and ever. Isn't that crazy?
It is pretty crazy. It's also like, I think I'm also it's such an honor to get to have anything to do with that, to just be a small part of creating this character that got to change things that in a franchise that is like, I don't know, the most important franchise in the
no, it's true. Yeah.
Universe.
I mean, come on, it is.
Obviously, I'm biased. I'm biased, but sue me. But I am also an Indian American, Asian American kid that grew up without anybody that looked like me or had my, complexion or remotely the same background. We had a poo on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Like that's who we had. That was the only Indian South Asian character I ever saw in movies or television. And think about that for a second, right? Like,
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. And so the idea that like I'm associated in any way with like a character that I think is like the most badass and so inspirational and just like incredible, and that a little boy or a little girl can look up to Sabine and go like, oh, she looks like me, or I look like her, or I feel like I could be her. I mean, that's hugely important to me, especially because I didn't have that experience. And I feel like I really could have benefited so much from having even just one character aside from a poo that I could go, oh, wow, I wish I could be like that person, or I'd love to be like that person, or, so I think, I know from personal experience how important it is. And so I feel so honored and like privileged that I get to be part of that for maybe a young boy and girl. Like I think, I know a lot of girls look up to Sabine, which I love, but I think it's also so important for boys to get to see these like powerful, strong, smart women that are capable and don't need a man to save them. And in fact, I mean, spoiler alert, at the end of Rebels, they're the ladies are the ones that are going to save the dude. And so the dude in distress instead of the damsel. So yeah, it's a real honor to get to be a part of that legacy.
Were you a Star Wars fan prior to the audition that got you the role, or did you like kind of like back into Star Wars after the fact?
The latter. I have been asked this many times because I know people, people, it's funny too, because like I remember I think people involved in Star Wars are expected to have entered, exited the womb as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah,
and so,
encyclopedic knowledge, right?
Yes, and what's funny is that that's true of a lot of my fellow like castmates and certainly everyone that works at Lucasfilm. Like it's incredible. And my very first session, the very first time I went to work for, once I got this job on Rebels as Sabine, my first recording session was with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Vanessa Marshall. and we had like a sit down meeting with Dave Filoni. So in the meeting is Dave Filoni, Vanessa Marshall, and Freddie Prinze Jr. and me. And Vanessa and Freddie are like encyclopedias as far as Star Wars goes. And then you've got Dave, who for me is like the messiah of Star Wars. And
he's the New Testament for sure.
Yes, I was thinking, yeah, New Testament for sure. And I was like, I felt so out of my depth. And I think I texted my manager from the meeting and I was like, I think I might get fired. Like, I'm terrified. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was like determined, to go and like do as much homework as possible, which I didn't realize even how much homework there was to do, but it's like the best kind of most enjoyable homework. So I went back, I like rewatched the original trilogy, sort of conveniently right when we started working on Rebels is when Clone Wars became available on Netflix. So I like binged Clone Wars, and Dave was really helpful. He, like directed me to like specific episodes and story arcs that, covered Mandalorians. And so it was really hugely helpful. And so, I mean, anyway, it didn't take me long. Like I was fully on board very quickly. And I always I use my mom as an example because my mom is like, I won't out her age, but she's, she's been around a while and she's like this very, I don't know. She's not a sci-fi gal by any means. I don't even consider Star Wars like traditionally sci-fi. I feel like it's so much, there's so much more, no offense to sci-fi, but I put Star Wars in its own category.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars is essentially you don't even have to be a geek to like Star Wars nowadays, right?
Totally.
Like
it's universal.
It's in it's in the ether, right?
Yeah. And so anyway, my mom like very quickly became a full-on Star Wars nerd geek, like in all the chat forums, and like she would come to me and be like, listen, I think Sabine Wren might die after season 2. And I'm like, what? And she's like, that's what everybody's saying. And I'm like, what are you doing? Get out of those chat rooms. Like, I feel like I would know before they or you or whomever.
Right. She's like fan theorizing with everybody else.
Totally. But so it's just a testament to Star Wars. I feel like that someone like my professor, Indian immigrant professor mother, was just like is a full-fledged Star Wars fan now. And so anyway, I have no qualms in saying I never want to like pretend to be something I'm not. And so I don't ever want to pretend like, oh, I was a Star Wars super fan before. And because why do you need to do that? Like Star Wars is so great that like you can come to it at any point in life from any background, from anywhere. That's what is magical about Star Wars. And so
exactly.
I
mean, there's a specific type of like gatekeepy fan that gives a shit that how much you know. I
have encountered such fans.
And it's all bullshit. It's like you don't like, who cares if you can name like all of the holocrons or whatever. I don't know.
Right. Like I think that's the beauty of Star Wars, is that it's so accessible, and now even more so because there is so much more Star Wars. And like
it's almost like too much Star Wars.
no such thing.
You're right. But it's a lot to keep track of nowadays.
And coming back to like our conversation about specifically like Asian representation, like to me, again, as an Asian American, growing up in a vacuum of like almost no Asian American representation in mainstream media that wasn't like the nerd or the surgeon
IT guy,
or and even still that person was probably East Asian, not South Asian. So like or like Long Duck Dong. I mean, these are just that's what we had.
Yeah, like you said, Apu was the only Indian character of any prominence for a long time.
So like I'm so envious that someone might have watched that Rogue One might have been their first taste of Star Wars, and that like
Riz
that's so
Ahmed
exciting to me.
Entry point. Yeah.
Yes, like it's so exciting to me, and it makes me feel I'm like a teensy bit envious but I'm so glad that that's the case now, Yeah. And that there's Rose Tico, and she's a Star Wars heroine, and there's action figures of Rose, and little girls everywhere can have that, and Rey and Leia, Anyway.
No, it's awesome. I can cut this out if it's too sensitive, but like I know there's a live action Ahsoka show. You've addressed this on social media. I wrote many posts on Twitter and even an essay on the Nerds of Color. Would you be interested in reprising Sabine on camera? Again, I can cut this.
No. I mean, you don't have to, because like you're not asking me, am I? Because
are you?
Like
No,
I get I get that question a lot. Yes, of course. I love Sabine. Sabine feels like, I as I said before, like I love her. I respect her. I think she's incredible. I feel such a kinship with her. I feel like I know her intimately. I've known her for a long time. I've never been connected to a character in the way that I am connected to Sabine.
Right. I mean, four seasons.
I think she's awesome. Four seasons, but also like, we recorded a year before it ever premiered on television. And since then, I mean, she's just been a part of my life for so long. It's not once we stopped recording actual episodes that she's no longer a part of me. So she really is like a part of me. And so if I were to get the opportunity to play her in any way, whether it's animation or live action, I would love that opportunity. But that being said, it's not up to me, sadly.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately,
whatever happens. But I think people are well aware of my feelings about whether or not I would. I definitely would. But I get that it's if it were up to me, I'd play Sabine forever and ever. In all the ways, live action, animation, on the street corner, but like
it's not just you. I think I speak for the majority of Star Wars fans that we feel the same way. I guess the only question is that we saw how she looks in the finale, and the assumption is that's what she'd look like in the live action. Would shaving your head be a deal breaker, or would you absolutely shave your head dyed blue?
wigs are a thing, so like I'm happy to wear a wig, but like if it took me like cutting my hair into like a purple pixie cut to play Sabine, sign me up. Where
Cool.
do I sign?
Awesome. That's what I wanted to know. That's what I wanted to hear.
Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.